Welcome to a special panel discussion with some of the University of New Mexico's administrative leaders. We'll be delving into the many roles UNM plays in serving and enhancing our community and state. I'm Gene Grant. Today I'm joined by UNM President Bob Frank, who is charged with the running of the university, an incredibly complex organization. He's also responsible for moving UNM forward under the vision outlined in the UNM 2020 strategic plan. President Frank is also a three-time alum and former student athlete. Also, Chaouki Abdallah is the Provost and Executive Vice President of Academic Affairs and oversees UNM's academic and research enterprises. It's his job to ensure that the university's programs and faculty are the highest quality and that students are given the tools necessary to succeed. David Harris is Executive Vice President of Administration, COO, and CFO. He is responsible for the financial health of the university and oversees the many departments that provide financial, administrative, entertainment, recreational, and general student services. And Dr. Paul Roth is the Chancellor for Health Sciences. The HSC includes the School of Medicine, Colleges of Nursing, and the Pharmacy and UNM Health System. He is also the Dean of the School of Medicine. Thank you all for being here. It's going to be a great discussion. So many things going on at the university. And President Frank, let me start with you. And I want to ask this of all you, the big picture, 30,000 feet from all your points of view, but starting with the idea that the research university of UNM versus other universities, a lot of folks don't get the difference between a research university and other universities. In your view, what makes the difference there?
Well, a research university has the research enterprise as part of it, so a small college would have the responsibility of teaching students. A research university has the responsibility of creating knowledge and teaching students and engaging students in that process of understanding the creation of knowledge. Now, we also have the Health Science Center that Dr. Roth runs, and actually our Health Science Center has a bigger budget than the regular university does, so we do three things. So we have a health science center that creates tons of knowledge. We have the entire research enterprise, and we have the traditional teaching enterprise. So we do all of these things. So we create this entire research enterprise that does biomedical teaching, traditional research, and then we just teach as well. So we are this incredibly complex enterprise that does all these things for New Mexico, and it goes way beyond New Mexico to our entire region, indeed the world, in many of the things we do.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot. Chaouki, good to see you, but I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
When it comes to students, let's start with the basic facts. What are we talking about for the size of the university for students, the amount of students coming in and out in a given year? What kind of enterprise are we talking size-wise at UNM?
Well, thank you. We have about somewhere between 3,000 and 3,500 freshmen who come in, depending on the size of the entering class. Right. And they progress through their 4, 5, 6 years, and hopefully we'll talk a little bit more about the time it takes to graduate. But we have somewhere in the neighborhood of about 25, 26,000 FTE, full-time equivalent students. We have more than that. We have part-timers, people taking a lot less than the 12 or the 15 credit hours that we want them to take. That includes a large number of graduate students, about 6,000 of them. But the main point about the size of the student body is that because of what the president just mentioned, is that they're engaged in a lot of activities. They're not just there to learn, to sit in classes. They're engaged in research at the graduate and the undergraduate level, and they're also doing a lot of service, doing a lot of things outside. We have a lot of community learning type activities, as well as service learning and so on.
Inside of that, it seems to me, those numbers, there's also a lot of constituencies, to use a word, that you have to serve as well at UNM. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, our student body is very diverse. It's diverse in capabilities, it's diverse in backgrounds, it's diverse in national origin, and so on and so forth. So we serve, unlike many of our competitors, because we are a very high research activity university. We're a flagship of the state. But we also serve students who otherwise in other places would have been served by either a branch campus or even in some cases a different campus of the university. So unlike other states such as the California state system, the University of New Mexico takes in students who are making it into college, they're first generation, they're capable, but also at the other end we serve people who could have gotten into the top schools in the U.S., and those we try to serve within the Honors College, as well as many of our programs that we have that cater to the higher ability or the higher prepared students.
Sure. Sure, that's a tough go. It seems to me you're serving a lot of different needs there all at once. It's very interesting. David Harris, as CFO and COO, amongst other things that you're doing there, the finances, how to serve everything that we've just talked about here. How difficult, for folks that don't understand how a university runs financially, the broad picture of how that works?
Well, I think that it's very important to understand how complex the university is. We have a number of colleges, we have our research component, and in order to support and facilitate those activities, we obviously have to have good technology, first-class technology. And I think that's the real key in our area, that we can enhance good financial communication, whether it's procurement or any other element of finance. I think the technology is the thing that makes it all work.
Sure. There's choices for students out there, be it in New Mexico or outside of the state or anywhere else. And so there's comparisons to what you're getting for facilities, I would imagine. Much like athletes want to make sure there's good facilities for their stuff, well, other types of students want good facilities as well. That's got to be a challenge to meet those needs.
It is an extreme challenge, primarily because we have so many, such a large campus. We have 13 million square feet of covered space in the university, from the health science component to the main campus to the athletics campus. In order to make all that work, keep the buildings heated, cool, clean, takes an incredible amount of juggling, obviously, because our resources are finite.
Interesting. Dr. Roth, good to see you. The Health Science Center is certainly a shining star on campus. Things have been happening over the past few years, but things are going to be happening later as well. That's going to be exciting. But in the broadest sense, what is your end of the world, and why is it important for UNM and for the state, what you're doing at the Health Science Center?
Well, we're considered an academic health center, which means that we have an academic mission for preparing the next generation of the healthcare workforce. We have an obligation to make new discoveries that will ultimately benefit mankind, improve the health and well-being, particularly of New Mexicans. But we also have this huge business that we run, which is the health delivery system, in the form of our hospitals, our clinics, and our faculty practices. So in any given year, we'll have between 550 and maybe 600 different activities around the state of New Mexico, where we're in about 160 different communities. Wow. We work with local communities to help them ask important questions. How can we improve the health of our citizens in our location? We send our students out to all parts of New Mexico so they can understand what it's like to practice in their particular health profession in that community, with the hope that they will eventually decide to practice there. And then we provide patient care in a number of locations around the state of New Mexico. But of course, the biggest place where we provide care is here in Albuquerque. UNM Hospitals is a referral center for major and highly complex inpatient care for the state of New Mexico. It's also the classroom for our students.
Also, another layer to that too, you mentioned the hospital. Do I have it correct that we're the only level 1 trauma center here in the state of New Mexico, and that when folks with serious injuries come up to your facility, there's got to be an extra responsibility there. You're almost like the hospital for the entire state in that regard, you know, and keeping up with those needs. What's your goal there to make sure you're serving the most needs here in New Mexico?
Well, as you mentioned, we have the privilege of being the level 1 trauma center, which means that the most seriously injured individuals in the state of New Mexico will be coming to us for our care. But we also have the only major sophisticated stroke center. We have the burn center. We have a number of other children's programs and surgical programs in which the only place where New Mexicans can actually obtain that kind of care, sometimes even outpatient care, but particularly inpatient care is here at UNM Hospital.
Interesting. And let's talk about student success. Let's start with you, President Frank. Lobo Respect has been a very interesting thing to watch evolve.
Yes.
Take us from where the original thought was to where it is today.
Well, Lobo Respect started from a difficult spot for us. We realized we were having too many uncivil events on campus, if you will, hate events, events where students were finding themselves disrespected either with harassment or uncivil events. So we took a look at ourselves and realized we had to change the culture on campus. So we started to work, and Tomas Aguirre, our Dean for Students, proposed to us an idea that we focus on more civility, and out of that we grew our Lobo Respect campaign, which really is a real simple premise of increased civility, focusing more on a simplistic model where we focus on how you get help when you need help, and having more civility on campus. Two simple premises. And since then, we've been working very diligently over the last year so that if a student has some sort of event where they need help, we have one stop where you go to get help. And we create a culture where people are kinder and more respectful of each other. So two simple premises. Sounds simple, but it's harder than you think. It's a huge campus and it turns over all the time. So, we are, if you take our campus, I think we're like the third largest city in New Mexico. And all the citizens, about half the citizens change every year. So it's a huge communication issue. Right. So we have to reintroduce all our citizens to what the rules are of engagement, how you treat each other all the time. So that's the complexity of it. So we had to change our rules so everybody knows where to go for help. And so we've done that, or we're about to finish doing that. And now we have to notify everybody where you go and get help every year when they come on campus. And then we have all these young people that sometimes don't always make great decisions.
Sure.
And they engage in drinking and may have poor judgment. So we have to say to them, if you're going to do these things, make sure, well, the idea we have now is this idea of the pack, make sure you're in the pack and the pack takes care of itself. So if you're going to go and drink, take a friend with you and don't ever leave your friend.
Sure.
Don't ever leave somebody behind. And that way, nobody ever gets left behind. So those are the simple concepts we're trying to engage.
Sure. And on that note, let's find out a little bit more about Lobo Respect with Dean of Students Tomas Aguirre and Lobo Respect co-coordinator and student Jacqueline Ekman.
Lobo Respect is an organizational design or a model that allows us to create a safer campus environment for all members of the UNM community, including faculty, staff, students, parents, alumni, even the children that just come here on a daily basis to see a show at Pokejoy.
We aren't only trying to change the culture related to sexual assault, we're looking also to changing the culture of hazing, of hate biases, of substance abuse. We want all of the Lobos in our community to respect one another, not only for their differences, but also because we're all part of the same community, we're all part of the same family.
Lobo Respect is built around these four principles or concepts. Compliance, which is looking at policies, procedures. Does it meet federal law, state law, university policies and procedures? The advocacy piece is how we support the members of our community. The response, which would be the initial response, and that could be anybody. That could be a policeman, a faculty member, it could be an RA, it could be a roommate, for example. And then the last piece is the education piece. We're not only looking at educating students, but we're also looking at educating faculty and staff.
One way that we reach out to the UNM community, we go to events where we know that a lot of Lobos are going to be gathered, and we distribute flyers, we hand out Lobo Respect tattoos. We invite UNM students to upcoming events that we'll be hosting, such as our open forum, Walks for Tolerance, all in an effort to inform the student body that there is an organization who is trying to come up with a solution to some of the problems that they may be facing.
What this model does really, really well is it brings units and individuals together, both from on campus and off campus, who traditionally wouldn't be working together. And it creates a certain kind of synergy and shared knowledge experience that really, sort of takes us to a whole nother level in terms of what we're able to accomplish here on campus.
Provost, I'd like to pick up on that as well. Students come in with their own ideas about what's right, what's wrong. If we think about the old days of, you'd have an introductory course, kind of a toss-off about how campus works. Nobody would think about it after that. And I think what the President's trying to get at, it sounds like a continuing process of education right through your 4 years. Or however.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. In fact, the President mentioned the Global Respect as an umbrella. In fact, we had a lot of programs that were disconnected. In fact, much of what we looked at is that we have different groups, different organizations, different offices addressing one or many of these. So as part of Global Respect, there is the education aspect, there's the compliance, there's the education aspect. And the education, as you mentioned, is continuous. And it's, by the way, education across, not just for the students, but it's for the faculty, for the staff, for everyone to be able to help someone get to the place, the appropriate place where they need help. Some of the issues the President mentioned are, civility issues. Some of them may be sexual harassment issues. Others may be criminal and others. So what we need to do is make sure that everybody knows enough, is educated enough to know where to get the help they need. And that's the idea of the first stop. That would be very better, as well as making some of the courses available, courses on ethics. Our faculty and our staff, everybody has to take courses continuously on preparing every year on issues that relate to some of these issues, and we're going now to a model where I think we're going to have the students also have to take some of these courses.
It never stops, and that's part of that preparation for life, isn't it? How to be a citizen, an engaged citizen later in life, and that's part of your campus experience. And that brings me to the subject about student success and how one measures success. I want to stay with your Provost on this one, and we'll kind of get around the table. But when a successful outcome, sometimes it's more about graduating, isn't it? It's about shaping a person and make sure they're a productive member of society. Talk about that. What constitutes success from your point of view?
Well, I'm glad you put it in those terms, because the term student success has meant for a lot of people graduating someone in a certain amount of time and getting them out, a certain percentage of graduation rate, which is absolutely essential. It's absolutely essential for the families, for the students, and for the state, for the taxpayer who's paying more than half of the cost of educating the students. So it is extremely important, and we're focusing on getting students out on time. But the more important aspect of student success is, are they going to be, what did we add, what kind of value did we add to this individual? When they come to us with certain preparation and a young 18-year-old, when they graduate, be it in 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, what did we add for those folks to become productive, engaged members of society? And we do know that people who graduate have less problems with drugs, alcohol, health. They vote in larger numbers, all of the good things that we get. Unfortunately, we can't measure that immediately as they're leaving. We know based on the numbers that this is what's going to happen. So we are looking at ways to measure the difference that we make, and they're new now to measure from the time they come in. We look at a cohort and we measure certain characteristics, critical skills, reading comprehension, the ability to do some quantitative thinking and so on. And then we measure at the exit, and we see based on the characteristics of our population where we should be. And I'm happy to note that UNM always exceeds where we should be, meaning that we're adding more value, because it would be very easy to filter people out, to say we're only going to accept the people who can graduate in 4 years. We know how to do that. In fact, many other schools do. Our challenge is to take the students who can potentially succeed, give them the tools to succeed, demand from them that they succeed, but support them. On the other side, what we want to make sure is we added a lot more than what they paid for and what's expected from us. And that's what we're focusing on these days.
Interesting. David Harris, from your end of the university, so to speak, contributing to student success, where do you see it?
Well, I believe student success means realization of your goal, whatever it might be. There may be students who just want to re-educate themselves, and it may not end up in a degree. So I think that if we create an opportunity that permits people to realize their own personal goals, then we're doing a pretty good job.
Dr. Roth, touch on that if you would. Again, you're a little special end of the university there, but I have to imagine same goal, right? You're putting out students who not just want to serve, but they're different people at the end of the day once they get through your system.
Yeah, that's a critical issue. Obviously, as David mentioned, trying to address individual students' goals is important, and by the time they get into our part of the university, they've already figured out what they want to do as a career, and now they're immersed in a very different culture. And the expectations associated with students who elect to choose a career in healthcare are very different than what they've been accustomed to in the past. So it's more about other people, not them. There's an aspect of professionalism and how you talk to other people, and how you position yourself with respect to circumstances where maybe personally you may have a problem with a particular societal issue, but knowing that that can't influence how you treat other people. So success, and to also capitalize on what the Provost said, success, while akin, there are metrics that we've used as a default for success in the university. Most of success is very subjective, and it's expressed by the type of human being that comes out of the enterprise, out of the educational institute, and their contributions back to society and to the profession or the vocation that they elect to participate.
You know, I've lived in New Mexico all my life. I grew up here in Albuquerque, and I think a traditional image that the university had acquired over time is that we had a good admission policy, but we were admitting students who were ill-prepared in math and in English. And I think something President Frank did when he first got here that's kind of been forgotten is that he really retooled those programs so that we don't have to have students stuck in remedial courses for years, lengthening the time to degree. And I think it was really important, and I think it has changed the connectivity to the community.
When you talk to the public and you hear politicians talk about it and other folks, the 4-year mark is the mark. And folks are really, it's been traditional that UNM presidents have been under the gun about graduating more kids in 4 years than probably anything else we can think about in the public. What's your sense of that, and where the university needs to be on that issue particularly?
Well, you know, it's a traditional mark that's always been used, and in fact, we just created a new plan that would encourage and incentivize students to graduate in 4 years, and a certain number of students can do it. Historically, 18% of our students have done it.
Okay. Hopefully more with the
Hopefully with this new plan, we think we'll try and focus more students to do it. And what you find out is that a certain percentage more could do it, but some students like to shop around. They like to take an extra minor, they like to take a little more time because they enjoy college. College is an enjoyable time of your life. Some students recognize that it's the last time they have that luxury. They know that there's a job right over the horizon, and when that job comes, there's a certain structure to your life that won't be there in the future. So they're not in a hurry to get done with college. And we've noticed as we've looked that students have increasingly taken smaller course loads. And so last year, or 18 months ago, we incentivized them to take more course loads to move them through faster, because we recognized that if they move through faster, they would get closer to that shorter timeline. So we had already taken a step, but with this new plan that we just started this year that we call Aim to Achieve, it'll put more students through, so that if you get on target and stay on target, the tuition for your last semester will be free. You'll still have to pay the fees that are associated, but your tuition would actually be free. So those students that are able to do that will do that. Now there's some cohort of students that don't have the option. They have to work, they have some other things in their lives that don't allow them to have that freedom. So some students will still stay on that longer plan, but we're trying to incentivize those students that are able to do it up, and we know that those students that we can get in there will go through faster, and that's good for us because those students will graduate faster, and that'll increase our four-year graduation rate, which improves a lot of the numbers that we look at all the time. Sure. At the end of the day, our core business is graduating students. That's what we're about. That's what every part of the university is about. He's about graduating medical students, nurses, everybody else. Now, as Paul noted, when they get to him, it's not usually much of an issue. He's got virtually 100% graduation rate for everybody that walks in his doors, so we don't worry about it when they go over across the street. But on the other side of Lomas, it's a little more complex. Now, one of the things that David mentioned briefly a moment ago is that, we get a certain number of students that aren't prepared for college. And so the provost and his team have done a number of really great programs that enhance college readiness. And with those enhanced college readiness, we've taken a number of students that have come out of some New Mexico high schools that weren't really ready for college, and with this new set of skills we give them, they now go through UNM and do quite well. When we give them these better math skills, better writing skills, and some better just readiness for college skills, these kids now graduate from UNM. We used to lose them. So when we give them the right sets of skills, they can get through the University of New Mexico. So our primary concern is, we know this 4 years is a big number in the public, we want to hit it, but at the end of the day, we want graduation. So if they take 4.5 and they graduate, we're going to have the party. If they take 5, we're going to have the party, but we want graduation. That's the party for us.
Sure.
So 4 is wonderful, we love it, but graduating is what counts the most, and that's going to make our state the best.
Interesting.
Just-
Provost, meeting students where they are has got to be a big part of it, it seems to me. On the front end, the president just mentioned you've got some new things in place. But there's always been a traditional problem with how does one set a threshold for entry into UNM? Who gets cut out of the system? Who's it accommodate?
Right.
Take us through that process and where the university is now on that.
Right. Well, so this is the concept, whether you want to filter people out or whether you want to pump them out.
Right.
So you can keep people from coming in, and in fact, the president just mentioned, for us, we can cut off at some GPA and some ACT, and based on those characteristics alone, on those two numbers alone, we can predict what the graduation rate is. So if you told me you needed 100% graduation rate in 4 years, I can accept the 30 students who will graduate in 4 years. Right. The point about this is that the mission of the University of New Mexico, as I mentioned initially, is broader than that. We need to take people who are ready for college, even people who may not be ready to graduate maybe in 4 years, and be able to do that. So the numbers, actually what we do is we look at shaping our entering class so that people can graduate. So we may accept people, right now it's at 2.5 is the GPA and a certain ACT. We may accept people at that level and above. It turns out actually our entering class, the average GPA is about 3, it's about 3.1 or something. However, you can have people with 4.0 coming in and they don't graduate. They drop out for other reasons. So a lot of the issues that we deal with to meet them what they are is, initially we do some filtering or some examination. We try to analyze, are they ready for college? Some of it may be financial literacy. In fact, a lot of people, when they drop out, they don't drop out for academic reasons. They drop out because they either missed something about the lottery. They mistook something about the conditions of the lottery. They drop out, or they took out a loan they shouldn't have taken, and then here they are. They have to do other things. So we're meeting them in that space, trying to do that. Another thing that we did, which I think is probably going to have a lot bigger effect than almost anything else, is up until very recently, our degree programs, were more than 120. You need to be at 120 to graduate in 4 years. 15 credits a semester, 4 years. That's it. So we changed that. We looked at it. There is no reason. There's no real reason. It just kept creeping. Some extra credit keep coming into the system. So when we changed that, we're finding out right now that people can take 15 credits and graduate in 4 years.
So one of the most immediate issues that undergraduate students face at the University of New Mexico is the funding of the lottery scholarship. There are so many students on the lottery scholarship, which is a really good thing, but it's also a problem in that the funding is deteriorating. The lottery scholarship was never meant to be 100% funded for all students. In the next 5 years, the lottery scholarship should be hanging at around 80% of the total tuition cost. But of course, for students, we would like to see 100% of our tuition covered by the lottery scholarship. So what we're looking at right now is other alternatives, whether the scholarship should maybe be completely need-based, or whether it should be merit-based for those students who did well in high school, who continue to do well in college. So what students can expect to see next year is that 90% of their tuition will be covered both by the lottery scholarship and with supplemental funding from the university.
Another obstacle here at UNM, specifically for graduate students, is that graduate students take full funding in the fall and the spring, which gives them no money to attend classes during the summer. So what GPSA has done this year is created a summer scholarship, and currently we can tell you 80 students will be able to go to school this summer to graduate on time or early if they would like. Assistantships are a big part of why graduate and professional students are coming to UNM. Those particular positions are very competitive because they pay tuition hourly and they pay insurance here on campus. And so we've worked really hard to secure that those positions wouldn't be taken away with any of the changes that are coming through the administration, and it will allow us to recruit more graduate and professional students around the world and to secure the assistantship programs here on campus.
Let me move on to another subject in kind of casting forward a little bit. A big bet that UNM is taking about the future. There's been we've had our ups and downs over the years with UNM and its connection to the community, to be fair about it. There's been, different levels of engagement, but this seems like it's a different level of engagement now. Something's pushing a little bit deeper into the community in my sense when I look out there. What is the big bet and what are you trying to accomplish with that?
Well, there are a couple of them, actually. One of them is you probably hinting at or leading to is the Innovation Academy, the Innovate ABQ thing, which is something when President Frank came on board, he wanted to reestablish or rekindle the relationship between the town and gown, basically, the university and the city and so on. So there's an economic development aspect, and I think the president and maybe David can probably speak better to that. There's an aspect of that which is called the Innovation Academy, which is the academic component of Innovate ABQ. And that's something very interesting because we're trying to have our students learn about establishing not just businesses, but establishing creative enterprises that could solve social problems, but also maybe some will make money, some will be connecting with the creative community that exists in space in New Mexico. So that's one aspect in connecting or engaging with the city, with the state, and with the citizens. There's another aspect, which is the community engagement, and that's something also that we're considering right now. We're looking back at some of the things we do, and we do a lot of it. The health sciences, as the Chancellor just mentioned, they have people in all parts of the state. They do a lot of different things in community engagement. So do we on the other side. We do a lot of things that are focused on specific community aspects. They may be to help a particular small school in the South Valley, or it could be something about helping with our civil engineering or construction program doing some things. What we're trying to do is now make that part of our evaluation and our mission that will spread across the university as we move forward. Before I got to you with this question, I wanted you to kind of pick up on what he said, because it's interesting when you consider a university's role in a community. There's lots of different ways one can go, but it does come from the top, President Frank. Somebody has to make a decision. And what was your decision here? Why this leaning forward?
The university needs to engage with the community in some way, as you note, and as you look at New Mexico and think, what would make our university different? There's lots of public research universities. Almost every state has one, and as we look around and think strategically, what's different about us? We've got a couple advantages. We've got a fantastic health science center. That's one advantage. Then the second advantage we have is the presence of these great public research labs, Los Alamos, 100 miles away, Sandia, and the Air Force Research Lab. And then the next thing we have is a cultural center here of the arts. So people come here because it's a phenomenally gifted arts community. So for our university, we have to think, how do we engage those things? And then the other thing we have is we have an economy here that isn't creating the kinds of jobs for university graduates that we want to see. So if you put all that together and think, for our university, what we want to do is take advantage of these fantastic research labs, which create knowledge, but they're not pushing the knowledge out. They're not taking their intellectual property and pushing it out the way they want, but that's what universities do very well. So if we partner with them, pull their intellectual knowledge out better like universities do, and then also engage in creating arts and entrepreneurship, we have something good. And so there you have the very nexus of what created Innovate ABQ. And that's how the whole thing got started, trying to say, partner with the labs, create more knowledge jobs, engage the arts, and that's what we have. And also partner with our Health Science Center, which has already been kicking out great opportunities. They create about I think 8 or 9 startup businesses a year on their own. So we put all that together in a great mixing bowl, and you've got sort of the startup of how we got to innovate. And we put it together, and we sort of spun it out in this rainforest idea of sort of creating a cultivating idea. The mayor jumped on it, and we started running it, and it's gone faster and better than we ever dreamed possible. I don't think we ever imagined that 3 years into this dialogue, or 2.8 years into this dialogue, we'd ever be at this point we're at today. So it's been a very exciting engagement.
Of course, nothing can tell the story of Innovate ABQ quite like video. Join STC.UNM CEO Lisa Kudla and the head of planning for the Innovation District, David Green, as they provide an in-depth look into Innovate ABQ.
Innovate ABQ is the nucleus of something that we like to call an innovation district. We hope to attract entrepreneurs, investors, developers from around the country to really create a vibrant ecosystem, something that startup companies will be attracted to, as well as larger companies.
This will be a very different way of thinking about development for Albuquerque. It's going to really transform the idea of simply having the city come in and build something, or the university come in and build something, or a private developer come in and build something. This is really setting up a development strategy where all of these groups come together and collaborate in the most efficient way possible.
The nucleus of it is right here at Central and Broadway, the 7-acre site that we're presently on right now. We're standing in the sanctuary of the Old Baptist Church. You can see the altar and the pews, which will be transformed into an event space. All types of entrepreneurial events will be held here at the Old Baptist Church. The 7-acre site will be a live, work, play community. We're standing in the Old Baptist Church courtyard, which, as you can tell, is pretty run down right now. This will all be transformed into an innovation district that will include buildings such as the incubator, the lab space, the office space, the building for student living, and it will include green space, which will be our innovation community gathering space.
The long-term outcome is to build a much more sustainable, economically and intellectually vibrant community. We're talking to other municipalities such as Santa Fe to see how we can collaborate with them. We're looking at initiatives coming from the county so that there are development opportunities at the county level that can tie directly into this project, as well as a citywide initiative. It's really a much larger statewide collaborative platform. It's never just about the single 7-acre site. This is just a catalyst to see things start to change in the state.
To meet the ambitious strategic vision that's been set for UNM, there are a lot of moving parts. All of these parts need resources, people, facilities, and funding, of course. And David Harris, I mean, this is right in your wheelhouse. Talk about that in the broad sense, about how that works.
Well, if you dial back to the Great Recession, 2008, 2009, UNM suffered greatly in our state funding as a result of that recession. We lost $62 million a year in state support over the period of one fiscal year. So we took steps to to cope with that. That's the best I thought we could do. We did not lay off employees, but it was a very difficult period. We've gradually begun to recover from that, but not fully. Obviously, those revenues that actually create the funding sources for UNM, our state funding, we're very reliant on that. And we're very fortunate that our legislature has traditionally valued education and has been willing to invest in it. The other large component is student tuition and fees. Each of those areas represent about a third of our revenues. If you look at the bigger picture, the 30,000-foot view, across America, all public universities in all states are having great difficulty sustaining their state support. What have they done to cope with that? They've raised tuition in extreme amounts. We've not done that here in New Mexico. I think the general mindset here is that higher education should be affordable. And I think that we honor that. It's sometimes difficult, but I think all in all, we've generally coped, and we've met our challenges, our financial challenges. I think we all have pretty advanced financial intelligence. We try to do smart things with the resources that we have, each of us at this table.
President Frank, that's not easy to make up, however. $62 million any one given year could be very impactful on the university. But in the broadest sense, balancing the budget at the school, what's your philosophy there?
And this is the most affordable public research university in the country. We are at the bottom of costs for a public research university. If you look across this nation, this is flat out the most affordable public research university, bar none. So we've done a great job with our money. I always sort of tease that our faculty treat a dollar like a depression mom. You know, we stretch it as far as you can stretch it in every which way. So I think we are very cautious with our dollars. The downside of that is that our faculty salaries are lower. That's not always good. We lose good faculty that I don't think we should lose. In the Health Science Center, our faculty are at the lowest end, and on the other side of the street, we lose some good faculty that we shouldn't lose. So I think there's a tug of war here of how do you balance those two things. So we get our faculty salaries a little higher so we don't lose good people. And on David's side, we have some investments in physical infrastructure that are needy, that are also a weighty issue on his list. So, you know, we're struggling with all these issues. We struggle with them. Every major university is struggling with them right now. And I think, you know, what the American public hasn't quite recognized yet is that the American higher education model is the envy of the entire world. We are way ahead of the world, but we're gradually, if it were, you know, the old race, our lead is shrinking, and other nations are catching us. You know, how quickly do we want to get caught is the problem. But right here in New Mexico, we have one of the best. And our faculty are so dedicated. I am just awed by the dedication of the faculty at New Mexico. No matter where you are, what department, where you go, people work extremely hard. So a little bit more of a preaching moment there than I maybe. But,
it's okay. But I do have a question inside of that. That was A-okay. In a perfect world looking forward, do you have a number in your mind? You don't have to say the number, but do you have a sense of where you think the university would be optimally run with a budget? Are we very far away from that number? Are we close to that number? And additionally, is there a way to ask the public to contribute more if they perceive that the university is something for the entire state to contribute a little bit more to that end result?
Well, we clearly need to have more revenue coming into the university. The Regents just passed a plan that I thought was very foresighted on their part that commits to 3% per year. A little bit of that is going to go into funding that plan that I told you about that gives the free tuition to students. I thought that was a very foresighted moment by our Regents. I was very proud of them to make that commitment to the university. On the Health Science Center, we face a huge moment of flux. There is no predictability on what's going on over there. We're walking on eggshells over there trying to determine what's going to happen with the funding of health science, of healthcare in America. So we just keep planning and testing to see what's going to happen. I think we are doing the best we can in planning. I'm very proud of what Paul and his team's doing over there. His funding is driven largely by the clinical revenue that we make over there. That's what drives him. We're flip sides on the two areas. This one side's 80-20 and he's 20-80. So it's always the inverse of how we run this place. Yeah. So the entire enterprise is driven by some very fragile dynamics right now. Both sides need help. I think we could use more state money on both sides of the street for different reasons, but both are needy right now and needs solidification. The state, though, has challenges of its own, so it's not that we don't understand that.
Sure. Provost, traditionally, some schools, you mentioned this a little bit earlier, that tuition increases is the default way to raise more income. What can New Mexicans handle or not handle when it comes to increases? Has there been some clarity over the years that, a certain threshold just doesn't work or a certain threshold does work? Any sense of that at this point?
Yeah, in fact, we model these a lot, and we try to look at what is exactly the mix between what we can get from the state and from the tuition. Let me first clarify something. When we talk about tuition, most people talk about the published or the tuition that people hear about, which is currently about $6,500 for the university tuition and fees, $6,500 per year, which places us, as the president mentioned, at the bottom of the research universities in the United States. But what's really more important is the net tuition. How much do the students pay after you take away financial aid, not including loans that you have to repay? And that is even a more impressive number. It's $1,200 actually. Oh, wow. So the average student at the University of New Mexico pays $1,200. Now, some of them, we have about 15% of our students who pay full tuition, published. The rest of them, 85%, are getting some kind of financial aid. So when we talk about tuition and the raising the tuition by 3% and so on, it doesn't mean that people are going to pay $6,500 plus 3%. Of course, the flip side of that is it was either going on the lottery or on some other financial aid package. Sure. But going back to your question about what can they afford, the state of New Mexico supports higher education very well, about 14%, and this is one of the top in the United States. In fact, the taxpayer is giving more of their tax dollars to higher education as well as to education overall. But the system is not very efficient at distributing those dollars to the different universities and so on. How much can people afford? Well, there are these models that say so much of your gross income as a family can go to higher education. Really, the trouble with that is, and we are I forgot the exact number now, but we are completely affordable. We have something in there. But here's the trouble with that number. That doesn't account for everything to attend the school. So when we say it's for $1,200, actually the total cost of attendance is almost $20,000 because you need food, you need books, you need housing, and so on. That's the part that we don't control and we can't control. So tuition is really the least of your problem. In fact, the cost of books right now is more than tuition. Right. It is more than the net tuition, more than the $1,200. The average cost of books is somewhere around $1,500 across the U.S. So therefore, it's all of these parts working together. I don't, unlike many others, I don't suspect we're going to get a lot of money from the state. I don't suspect we have a lot of money that's going to come in from raising from a lot of tuition, with the exception of things like the 3%. I think our challenge is to try to enlarge, to get new revenue sources. It could be potentially different types of students that we're not reaching right now. They may be students online. They may be students that, adult students, other things like that. That's, I think, where we can get more without having to raise tuition on the students that we have and that we project to have, because the state is not growing in numbers.
Giving students the opportunity to work with their professors and conduct research is a big part of how UNM prepares them professionally, certainly. Research at a university such as UNM is really about creating new knowledge. And David Harrods, let me ask you this. A lot of research going on, certainly, but what are some of the big success stories you've had recently with research at UNM?
You know, we have a number of corporations that STC has spun off, and one of the inventions that we had in the area of microlithography actually generated a tremendous return to the university and to the inventors. So
we do have multiple companies that spun off. We spin off, like as was said before, I believe 7 or 8 a year. Many of them get bought out, or some of them are still growing and hiring people in New Mexico and so on. I do want to mention also another aspect of research is not just the economic impact that it has. As you correctly mentioned, it trains students. Research is about generating knowledge, and many of that knowledge is long-term. So in many cases, it's not necessarily about the next company or the next invention, but rather to train people who 10, 15, 20 years maybe winning a Nobel Prize or doing something else. And then there's the other aspect of the research that I think also doesn't get as much publicity, and that is we have a lot of faculty who do creative work. That's not something that is necessarily funded by an external organization. Some of it is, some of it may not. In fact, one of our most recent successes is we just had one of our faculty members receive the first Carnegie Fellowship, which is just given this year. It's about $200,000 a year, and it's for research in the humanities. So the Carnegie Foundation funded 32 faculty, 32 professors across the U.S., and UNM was one of the recipients of that prestigious award.
That sounds terrific. President Frank, how does it fit into the bigger picture for the university?
Well, as the provost just said, one of the things we're going to do in the Innovation Academy is that's going to target both students in the arts and students in the sciences and students in the business. And so the whole idea there is that what students will get is an add-on to their major in a degree in an add-on minor in innovation and entrepreneurism. So we want students to come together in all kinds of degrees and work together. And so David just noted that the importance of STC, and the two fellows that we recognize as the most outstanding contributors this year to the university, Cheryl Willman and Jeff Brinker, this year they were both talking about what was most important to them in their work. Cheryl is the head of our cancer center, an oncologist by training, does leukemia research. Jeff's a nanoscientist. They've come together to work. They're doing some fantastic work where they're tagging nanoparticles, loading them with a special kind of what they call cargo, which is medicine, and it comes together. They both said the importance of collisions, coming together across their disciplines to work together. And so the idea is in the Innovation Academy, we want all of our different disciplines to collide. We don't mean physically collide, but to collide intellectually. And so the same idea is at work in what we're trying to do in the Innovation Academy. Bring all these people together out of their comfort zones of their little training areas to work together and learn different things. And that's what they will then take out, hopefully into markets and work together across ideas, new ways of learning and thinking, make whole new disciplines we don't even know. So we know right now when you come to college, the chances are by the time you graduate, there'll be disciplines that didn't even exist the day you walked into college. And so that's what the Innovation Academy is about. That's what Innovation ABQ is about. That's what's happening across the entire university. And so that's what we're trying to make happen at the University of New Mexico in all kinds of ways. And so when you talk about research, that's what our university does every single day.
Sure.
People in Albuquerque, I don't think realize the excitement of what goes on there all the time. And they come, and if you actually spend a day with us, you see the excitement of what our faculty are engaged in, how cutting edge some of the things they do is. And it is the most exciting things that go on right now in the entire world of science. It is really a great thing to go and spend a day in the lab with some of our scientists, if you can understand what they do, that is.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah.
David Harris, the funding formulas for research are interesting, certainly. As I read it around the country, a lot of universities like to roll a lot of money into R&D and just see what comes out later. Some folks like to creep in a little bit. First, what's your take on how the funding formula at UNM works for this?
Higher education funding formula creation has evolved really quickly over the last 5 years. Before that, we've been funded through some kind of a formula since the early 70s. But the early formulas were really based more on inputs. We'll give you money if you enroll more students.
Right.
And if you enroll students in more complex courses, we'll give you even more money. But the formula that we've now created is based more on outcomes. It's based on the kind of technical or STEM degrees that we can produce. It's based on the kind of at-risk students that we addressed. And for the first time this year, we are actually factored into the funding formula a factor for research. That factor only benefits 3 universities in New Mexico. We've been fighting for many years to be able to differentiate our work from that of the other universities because we didn't believe they really related to one another. And we've been successful in doing that over this last year. I think we're very fortunate to have Barbara Dameron as the Secretary of Higher Education in Santa Fe now. She gets higher education. She's going to work to enhance this program. And so I think from a formulaic perspective and having a research component is very beneficial to UNM.
We've been ready for this we've been moving to an outcomes formula for 3 years as a university. So we're positioned, the Health Science Center moved to this a long time ago, but we on the main campus moved to this 3 years ago, focusing more on outputs instead of just saying, you know, if a student enrolls in a class, you know, they could drop the class and, you know, 4 weeks in. That's what used to happen in the old formula, but in this formula, they have to be in the class at the end of the semester, complete it. And so that's when we say outputs. That's what we mean. Complete the class, get a passing grade.
And graduate.
Yeah. So we're talking about graduation. That's the difference. More graduates, more completed classes. You know, move along towards completion. So that's the difference. But we've been focusing on that for 3 years. So we were really ready for this, and so we're doing much better. Now we have every university has a long way to go. We have ways to go, but we're pretty well prepared for it.
I want to add something to the research funding. You mentioned about the university spending money on research, and you're partially correct. Actually, the university gets money from external entities, mostly from federal sources, but also from companies. I believe the health sciences does about $200 million in expenditures a year. We do about the same on the other side. This is money coming from out of state. So about somewhere in the $350 to $400 million that comes from out of state that creates not just new knowledge, but it trains students and so on. But on top of that, the university actually supports research in other ways. So we do spend more money in order to do research because either it's not funded or to kickstart something. So in many cases where we get money from the federal government and they pay some overhead, some facilities and administration's fee, it takes actually a little bit more, or we take some of that administrative F&A money and we put it towards seeding new research. So when we hire new faculty, for example, we need to equip a lab for them. That's something that the university spends in order to start something. The reason we do that is because we believe that A, it's going to attract the class of faculty that we want, B, it's going to attract the class of students and the students who want to be trained in this. But the most important thing is that out of that will come trained students as well as potentially the type of companies and innovations that the President and David mentioned.
And I think one thing Bob mentioned that's important is that research is a very broad term. It's not just someone with a microscope. For instance, if you look at our School of Architecture, our students are actually out engaging communities in their own planning efforts. So I think we need to think of research in a very broad context.
Interesting. The UNM Health Sciences Center is a pioneer of research and the impact it has on New Mexicans and the diseases they face. It's also the largest academic health complex here in the state. Now, Dr. Roth, it's interesting, we had talked a little bit earlier about some of the things you had done. I've sat here in this studio and talked to many folks from the Health Sciences Center dealing with Hep C, HIV/AIDS, all kinds of things going on in our state. We talk about diseases, we talk about health impacts and things. How do you approach this situation? There are so many things to tackle. Where do you start, frankly?
Well, you mentioned some kinds of illnesses that are very, very complicated and very complex to treat. And usually those types of patients require the advantages of the super subspecialists that you find in a teaching hospital.
Right.
To get that talent to where the patients are and where the needs are is one of the greatest challenges for our state and to assure health and well-being. One way in which we've addressed that is through using some technology that people refer to as telemedicine, but in a particularly innovative way in a program called Project Echo. Project Echo uses some of the technology associated with telemedicine, where you can communicate remotely, both visually and audio, but convert that into an opportunity to connect with multiple locations around the state of New Mexico, all at the same time, everybody kind of listening to the conversation, a nurse practitioner in Roswell, a physician, family practice doctor up in Taos, or anywhere around the state, all hearing and participating at the same time, with one individual in a rural area that may have a hepatitis C patient. And hepatitis C is very complex. It requires multiple types of medications, very sophisticated, often with lots of adverse effects and reactions to those medications. They interact with one another, and you really need to have the availability of an expert to know if a particular symptom is as a result of the disease or as a complication of the drugs that they're taking.
I see.
For just one example.
Please.
While we can provide advice and counsel for the one patient, that becomes a learning experience for everybody who's listening in. So it's both providing direct patient care to individuals who need it the most in the most rural, remote areas, and also provides an opportunity for those providers to learn more about that particular disorder so they will feel more confident in managing other kinds of patients like that. So that's just one example of a very innovative program that was born out of the University of New Mexico.
David Harris, you know, a lot of the things that Dr. Roth just mentioned it takes infrastructure, technology infrastructure. These things cost money, and you have to kind of cast forward a little bit to meet those kinds of needs. What are some of the challenges of getting the infrastructure together so Dr. Roth can make these things happen?
Well, we don't really provide directly the infrastructure for Dr. Roth's operation because they actually have an enterprise that generates revenue that enables them to keep pace with their infrastructure requirements. But also we issue bonds at the institution level. We also are very active in the capital outlay process in state government. And there was a time when the Congress was actually facilitating earmark appropriations where we were able to leverage a lot of that money. And it enabled us over the last 10 years or so to invest about $1 billion in infrastructure improvements at the universities. So, it's complicated and it takes a lot of forward thinking. But I think the most important thing at the university is that we have a viable master plan that we follow fairly religiously. And also we stay attuned to the needs that the students express to us. For instance, over the last 4 years, we've actually added about 1,800 new dormitory beds at the university because our students wanted to reside more closely with their learning environment. So we did that through a public-private partnership, which was really a first for us.
Interesting.
Please. May I interrupt or add something to what David said? While the infrastructure, as he said, the health sciences have a lot of their revenues and they go into the infrastructure. Actually, the Project Echo also relies on a lot of the infrastructure that the state provides in terms of telecommunication, fiber optics, and so on and so forth. And many of those are actually the University of New Mexico IT department, we work closely with the state and with others to try to fund some of these in order, for example, to project, to get some of these videos and audios from the remote areas. It's not something that we can do or they can do on their own without support from the others.
Yeah, the backbone that serves all of our telemedicine programs are dependent, are actually provided by main campus. And so that's a piece of the critical infrastructure. Utilities, I can't turn on my lights when
We bill for that, obviously.
Pay for our electricity and water, and I think you were about to charge us for
Those
our air,
modest.
too.
If you're breathing, I would.
Generation is selfish and so on is not really true. It's not there. What we find is when we first ask them, what are you interested in? They are interested in helping. They are interested in giving back. There is also the sign of the times that they are interested in getting jobs, and the economic downturn probably put a lot of pressure on some people's mind. But still, the main reason, or one of the top reasons why people do go into a particular field is the love of that field and the idea that they want to give back.
I'm realizing just sitting here listening to you this is complicated. This is a very complicated enterprise. It's not like running a machine shop. This is really an amazing thing. I have to thank you all for coming in. This has really been quite insightful. I would love the opportunity to do this again in much more detail in the individual schools as well, and bring in some other university folks and keep this going. This is very insightful. I really appreciate it. So thanks to our guests for their insights. There's certainly a lot going on at UNM. It's evident this conversation has only broken the surface of a deep pool of success and aspirations for the future of the institution. President Frank has said there are many imaginable futures for New Mexico. We've surely heard today that UNM is essential to every one of those imaginable futures.